Hello and welcome to the first 2025 episode of the AF Mentors podcast. Happy New Year, Jules.
Happy New Year to you.
Have you set some goals for the year?
Yeah, I have. I'm not as New Year's resolution-y as I used to be. But also, I think that's also because I don't give myself as much grief as I used to. So I don't feel the need to be like, you've got to overhaul your life and rebrand yourself every January.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel as if I'm kinder to myself and more realistic with myself. So therefore, but yeah, I do set goals.
Yeah.
Like, I think it's good. Like, I still think New Year's resolutions are good. Like, I think they get too much hate because I
Yeah,
think it's
me too.
real
Even that
hate.
stat that like 91% of people don't hit their New Year's resolutions. I'm like, okay, cool. Like, even if you don't hit it, are you closer than the version of you that hasn't even tried? Like, and is it that you haven't hit it because you set like massively unrealistic target, or you decided you didn't want that goal anymore, or whatever? But like, even if it's like the typical weight loss goal, and you do, I don't know, 6 weeks and then you fall off, or like you start exercising a bit, but you don't do that much, or you stuck to a diet for a little while and you learned something and it didn't quite work out. It's like you're still better than the version of you that didn't even do anything. So yeah, I agree. Like they get way too much hate.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people are saying about like not setting New Year's resolutions, but they'd also be the same people that are like, oh well, if you can't do 10K steps, do 8. Well,
Yeah,
that's the same as New Year's resolutions. If you can't actually hit the goal, do something.
yeah, yeah. I don't love year-long goals because we spoke about this on the mastermind yesterday. But I think so much changes in a year that it's just almost pointless. And sometimes I think people waste a lot of time setting out these like unrealistic timelines that are just absolutely perfect. And like, yeah, but it helps in my head. And I'm like, but that's not reality. And you've just wasted half a day like mapping out every single like month of the year and how this is going to go and this is going to go. And I'm like, stuff will change, trust me. And there's almost no point planning that specifically that far ahead. So I like looking at 3 month goals. And I realized as I was writing my goals for the 3 months, none of them were actually outcome goals. They were all actions that I wanted to take. And I didn't even really think about that. And then I was like, like that. And obviously there's like the goal sets the direction, right? But then it's
Mm.
almost like, now what do you need to do to get there? Okay, now forget about the goal, just focus on the actions. And I think if more people did that, rather than always looking at the outcome, always looking at the outcome, which is what tends to trip people up, whether it's building business, whether it's losing fat, whether it's building muscle, whatever, it's like you're always looking for a result, normally way too quickly than you deserve to get that result based on the effort that you've put in. So set the goal, give yourself the direction, decide which actions you need to take consistently on a daily and a weekly basis in order to get closer to that goal, and then just forget the outcome and just focus on the process.
Yeah, because it's exactly what coaches tell people to do with weight loss. You wouldn't be like, how many pounds did you lose on the scale today? You look at the actions that dictate, because we can't control the weight loss. We can control the actions that control the weight loss. And it's the same with business, that people are focused on the outcome, but don't look at what they need to do on a micro level, on a daily. What do you do this morning that gets you closer to it? It's that whole, it's in Atomic, I'm sure it's in Atomic Habits. It's called Greatness in the Moment. And it talks about, they use Michael Phelps, the swimmer,
Mm-hmm.
as the example for it. And they said Michael Phelps wasn't great the day he won the gold medals, because that was just the outcome. That was the day he got the reward for it. But that wasn't when he was great. He was great at 6 o'clock in the morning in January when he was tired, but he went to train anyway. And it's that greatness in the moment is putting out the podcast. It's showing up on your stories. It's all of the little things that come together to create you the reward. And the goal is the reward, that's the outcome. But being great, you've got to be great in the moment and do the actions.
Yeah, I love that. We used to have a saying in athletics that my coach would always say, and it was like, gold medals are won in the winter because winter training is boring and you don't normally compete. Like some people do an indoor season, whatever, but like really athletics is all about the summer season. And so the winter's like where you do all the hard training. It's really boring. It's cold. Like, you're doing it in Scotland. It's windy. It's rainy. It's hot. But it's like, that's actually when you win the gold medal, not on that beautiful sunny day where you run a PB and like you actually get on the podium or whatever. It's like you needed to do the hard work when no one was looking, when it was boring, when it was unenjoyable, or that's what you need to go through in order to get that outcome. And if you're not willing to do that, then like change your goal.
And it's like coaches, it's not actually when people sign up to the plan. It's not when you get the payout from Stripe. It's when you show up on a Tuesday night when you're tired, but you still put out that piece of content or you still make that podcast. It's the showing up that creates the outcome.
Agree. Right. So we wanted to go through, I texted Jules last night and I was like, come up with 3 mantras for the year. So you start with one first.
Okay. One of mine would be assume the best. Because if you don't know what's going to happen, you're assuming anyway and you're guessing anyway. So you might as well, while it's still unknown, Schrodinger's cat, while it's still unknown, you might as well assume the best because you're assuming anyway. So if you've got to make an assumption, assume the best.
Yeah, I love that. It kind of relates to like most of your fears happen in imagination, not reality anyway. Like you're worried about all these bad things that are going to happen, and most of them never actually happen. It's just our brains are predisposed to do that with negativity bias because that's how we survived. And it's like, it's probably not helping you now because it keeps you stuck and it keeps you quote unquote safe and comfortable. But that's not how you build. That's not how you grow. Like on a personal level, on a business level, like you have to push yourself outside that comfort zone. I like that. Right. Do you want to hear my first one?
Cool.
I'm going to get it up. Now, when I first heard this, I was like, this is so cool. Obviously, I saw it in a Sahil Bloom something or other, right? I can't find it on there. Hold on. And then someone was like, and I was like, I might get a tattoo of this, And then someone was like, oh, yeah, it's in the Gladiators movie. And I was like, oh, it's going to be like really generic, like when everyone got like Carpe Diem or whatever, like, no, because I can't do it. But I don't know if you say it exactly how you say this, but it's amor fati, which means love of fate. I think either in Italian or Latin, depending on exactly how you say it. But the application to me is like, embrace everything that life throws at you, whether it's good, whether it's bad, whether it's difficult, challenging. And you can't really plan for that much, right? Life is unpredictable. Back to what I was saying about setting goals. And adaptability is what you need to lean into, right? Like this is the whole like love of fate. Like it's going to be what it's going to be. You need to be adaptable. That is your greatest strength. And you backing yourself that you know that you can adapt to what life throws at you. That's like probably the most important like attribute you could have. Every unpredictable turn brings growth and opportunity. And the silver lining of all of the hardest things that you go through in life is that they will 100% teach you the most and you can't try and avoid them. So yeah, that's what I had. Let go of your desire to control everything. It's what feeds your anxiety. Accept the parts of your life that you can't control. You are more resilient than you think, and your power is in your response. The love of fate. I like that.
That is such a good point though about like the people who are most adaptable to change are generally your most successful people. Like you cannot plan for everything. And do you know what? I think if 2020 taught us anything, everybody had big plans at the start of 2020 and then life was like, nope, do something different. And the whole world had to do something different. The easier you can adapt to change, the more successful you'll be and your business will be. And that's the only constant is that things will always change. Like look at the conversation we had we had it in the WhatsApp group and then we talked about it on Mastermind about the whole how much AI is going to play a part of marketing in future. And people were like, oh no, I'm scared. When I look back to when I started my business, my marketing was like getting flyers printed off that I'd made on Word, took to the printers on a floppy disk. The printers printed them off and I went round shops and stuck them up. Now, if I look at that versus today's marketing, it's worlds apart. But I adapted to what today's marketing is. And whatever comes next, I'll adapt to that. And then whatever comes after that, I'll adapt to that. And being comfortable with change is one of the biggest skills you can have as a business owner.
And it's essential. Mm-hmm. If you want to last, like it's absolutely essential. The other thing you'll notice as well is like how much growth came from COVID. business growth. Not now, for sure, like we're in a certain industry where like huge business growth came with like online coaching and things, but just generally, like every shit thing that happens, like COVID was undeniably shit for so many people, but every shit thing that happens like is an opportunity. Same with like AI taking over a load of stuff, like that is also an opportunity. There will be gaps, there'll be things that like people still, if you work with a coach, you want to be heard, you want to be, you know, essentially that, like you want to speak to a human, you want someone to connect with, it's a relationship, it's a dynamic. So there'll be some people who just want information and they can get that from AI, but there'll be still people that want coaching, and that's very different. And I think that the way that online coaching will have to be is also very different. And I think that there'll be a lot of more generic type plans that, yeah, for sure, like they will be taken over. You know, it's the same kind of thing as, I think Kanchan said this in the group. She was like, two massive things this year, and I completely agree. Ozempic and GLP-1 type agonist drugs, like if you're someone who's like, my business is going to be replaced by that, you need to think more about your business, because that's just kind of saying that your business was solely weight loss and that you're not going to adapt to change and that you're not going to learn about it and you're not going to learn how to support people. Like people will need different support, but it's going to be just as important. It's going to be more about keeping that weight off after they come off the drug. It's going to be more about maintaining muscle mass. It's going to be understanding the side effects, etc., etc., etc. Right? Same with AI. Like there'll be huge opportunities that come from AI if you're willing to look for those gaps, if you're willing to learn about it, if you're willing to like be a couple of steps ahead, and you're thinking now, what changes are going to happen this year? What can I foresee coming? And you are like making a little bit of a bet on it. Like, I think this is going to happen. So I'm going to position myself so that when that does happen, I'm in the best position to capitalize on it. Like, that's what I'm thinking about.
It's fixed mindset versus growth mindset, isn't it? That you see AI and you're like, oh, this is going to take my whole business. Well, I might as well just give up now. Or do you look at it and like, wonder how I can use this to my advantage?
Mm-hmm.
And it's how you look at it that matters. It's your frame of it.
What's your second mantra?
Second mantra, okay, I'll go with this one. I actually heard this on an AFM podcast. It was Danny and Shar. Must have
Okay.
been
Yeah.
2 years ago, maybe. And it was Danny that said it. She said, easy keeps you stuck. And I was like, it does. And I just thought that was such a simple thing that if you take the easy path, you're never going to grow anywhere. Easy keeps you stuck. So what are you choosing? Are you choosing easy? Well, you're choosing to stay stuck. And it's your choice. Or you can choose to push yourself out of your comfort zone. That, again, like with the AI stuff, with learning about things like Ozempic, a lot of people are avoiding it because it's difficult right now for them. They feel out of their comfort zone. They don't feel sure of themselves. They're not confident in it. They feel like a beginner. So they're shutting down to it. So it's going to keep you stuck.
Mm-hmm.
Taking the easy path keeps you stuck. So push yourself out your comfort zone. Do the things that are uncomfortable. Be a beginner. Be willing to fail at things, because that's where the growth is.
And I think that kind of relates to like the saying about growth is behind whatever you're scared of the most. You know, whatever it is that you're putting off doing, whatever it is that you're really scared of doing, whatever it is that kind of like excites you a bit, but you're too terrified to do that kind of thing. That's where your biggest growth will come. And I think leading into that, and there is always like comfort in what you know. There's easy in what you know. Like we were talking about this a little bit on the workshop yesterday. Now it did make me think like people were saying, "Oh, I know I'm a bit scared about trying this. It's a new thing," and I totally get that. But like that should be something you lean into. And I genuinely look back on like the last like couple of months, and I'm like, if there's not something I've done that has scared me, like I need to change something. You know, because if I can do it all with my eyes closed, it's like, what's the point? I'm not growing. I'm not like pushing myself. There's nothing new here. I want something that scares me enough that like it really fucking excites me. And I think when you're thinking about your goals for this year or your goals for the next 3 months or just like the direction you want to take, like make sure that those goals are big enough and scary enough that they do, like, you know, they are scaring you a bit, they are pushing you a little bit. Don't just aim for something that's like easy, that's not really pushing you outside your comfort zone, because that's where you feel comfortable. And then sometimes it's hard because you're like, am I scared of that or do I just not want to do it? And you start to kind of question yourself. Like I'm thinking specifically of someone at the moment, I won't say exactly who it is, but one-to-one with me on AFM, and there was an opportunity that she had and we were talking through it, and I was like, do you not want to do it because you're scared, or do you not want to do it because actually it's not the way you want your business to go? And we figured out it like actually just wasn't the way we that she wants her business to go. So that was kind of like an easier decision. But you need to kind of push yourself on that and question yourself on that. Like, am I saying no because I'm scared of this, or am I saying no because I actually it's just not right for me? In which case, you absolutely should say no. Right, your time and energy is like your most important asset.
I think that's exactly what it is. It's being self-aware enough
Mm-hmm.
when you're like, actually, am I just a wee bit scared? Do I feel a wee bit nervous? Do I fear failure here? And if that's the case, push yourself outside your comfort zone. But you've got to have that level of self-awareness to be, right, actually, why am I avoiding this? Be truthful and honest with yourself.
Yeah. And that's where like having someone to talk it through with is helpful from an outside perspective. Um, okay, my next one is you can have it all, obviously followed by fuck being average. Um, People often like quite nonchalantly kind of say, well, you can't have it all. And I just think, what fucking bullshit. Like, you absolutely can have it all. And yes, it will require more work. Yes, it will require more sacrifice. And that's what most people aren't willing to do. So, what people are kind of really saying is like, you can't have it all if you're not willing to put in the effort to get it all. It's like, yeah, okay. So, what they're saying is, I'm not willing to put in the effort to have like that version of have it all, whatever that looks like for you. And by have it all, I'm kind of referring to what Jules always talks about with like your rich life. Like, what do you actually want your life to look like? Because you can curate that. And often when you actually identify it, it's not, it's not a million miles away. It's not like I want 10 Porsches and I want this and this and this. It's like, no, but like realistically, what do you actually want to live like a happy life that you really fucking enjoy? And you deserve that. Everybody deserves that. And that should be something that you're striving for. But there are a lot of people that it's more like they'll say, well, you can't have it all. It's more like, well, I can't have it all because I'm not willing to do the work to get it all. But I'm like, but I am, right? So I will have it all. Thank you.
That's like a quote I seen yesterday, and the quote was, "You can't do that," and it said by a person who has done precisely nothing. And
Yeah.
it's that. Don't tell me what I can and can't do. When you say it can't be done, you mean you can't do it.
Mhm.
And I think it's all right. Like, it's okay to think like that. Like, think big. Just because somebody else can't do it doesn't mean you can't do it.
Yeah.
And I think like when people say you can't have it all, I think a lot of the time they're referring to like having various areas of your life that you can't excel in every area of your life. Yes, you can. It just
Yeah.
you going to put the work in.
And then the other truth is like, not everyone values every area of their life the same, right? So having it all for some people might be like, yeah, like work takes up a bigger area of my life than, I don't know, my family life or something like that. And it doesn't always have to be like, 25% of each area of your life is exactly the same. Like people have different priorities, people have different relationships with their family, with their partners, with whatever. Like it doesn't have to look the same for everyone, and it should be based on you and your values and what's important to you. And that's okay if that looks different than somebody else. Just to like tangent on this before we move on to our last ones, because another thing that we were going to talk about today, I didn't know whether to wait for another podcast, but I thought it might, this kind of slips in nicely here, is because it's been Christmas, because it's been New Year, because a lot of people have like gone home to their hometowns, family, etc., etc. There has been like a bit of chat, especially with my one-to-ones. I don't know if you've had the same, of just, I found that quite hard because not everyone understands what I'm doing. Then I start to question myself because of the people I'm around. And what's interesting is that used to impact me far more. Now, when you have more, I'm just going to say like obvious success, right? Or like, yeah, I guess that's probably the simplest way to do it. Like, one, people kind of question you a little bit less. And when they do, you don't feel the need to back yourself up and you don't have as much self doubt because you have proof. So now when someone's like, oh, you're still doing that stuff with the online stuff, I'm just like, yeah, I'm still doing that stuff with the online stuff. And like, I don't need to prove anything. So I'm like, I know it works. I know I'm changing lives. I know I make loads of money. Like, I know, like, you know, I don't need that person to understand what I do and to get their, like, whatever, like their respect or anything for what I do. Don't need to prove anything to them. So it doesn't bother me. But for sure, it does when you're starting out, right? And when you already have a lot of self doubt and you're like, I don't know if I can make this work. And then someone else is like, yeah, it looks a bit like, shouldn't you get a job or blah, 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 right? So I understand that that hits harder at those points. And that's what a lot of people have been exposed to over the Christmas period. And I did notice it's just like the environment that you're in matters so much. And it's not even like I had no negative experiences whatsoever. I have a really supportive family and really supportive friends. But they are in many of them, especially my friends and family in Scotland, it's such different phases of their life, right? Like young kids, they have like, to be honest, most of them have jobs that they don't enjoy, that they're not like passionate about. And again, that's totally fine because maybe they put more of their effort into their family life and that's what they are passionate about, that's what they're excited about. None of this is like judgmental by any stretch, but being around so many people with different probably core values than you does rub off on you a little bit and start to make you question yourself or start to make you kind of like think about stuff. And I just noticed like this shift for me coming back to London was just like massive, and it's so easy to get like quite uninspired depending on the people you're hanging around with. Now, compounded by that, because I know that a lot of people might be listening to this night, but I do live in my hometown and I am surrounded by these people in my family and whatever. Compounded by that is that I took time off work, right? Like, I don't think the amount of inspiration I get from the coaches on AFM is unbelievable, but like, I wasn't engaging in that because I was taking time off, right? As everyone was at Christmas time. So I think it was that compounded with the environment that I was in and the, like what those people deem as success and what their ambitions were and like just how different those people's lives are. And of course, like everybody questions themselves a little bit, but it's much easier when you've kind of backed yourself enough and been doing it long enough and you have a lot of like proof of concept. And I think, like, to be totally honest, people accept it more when you've made decent money doing it. And maybe part of that is, especially from your like close friends, family, parents, that like from genuine like concern of like, oh my God, you're doing this new thing and like what if you can't make enough money to support yourself, or like, what if you really struggle and what if the business fails or something. So they're like, oh, we want you to have some security, which they see as a job, right? Whereas when you're in a different position, it's like they're not worried about that anymore. They can see that you've been like somewhat successful in that regard. Then it's a lot. You get a lot less judgment for that.
And it's
What are your experiences of
a lot of the time it is people who they're giving you advice from their perspective. We just chat in the WhatsApp group again this week about how if I was going to do something with the business, I probably wouldn't ask Ross what he thought about it because Ross is a corporate guy. I'd maybe ask you. I'd ask other entrepreneurial friends because you have got a different perspective and you would ask me different questions and you would have a different outlook on it. So sometimes when family and friends are coming across as what you think is negative, it's just what they would do. Like, COVID was a really good example of this. I remember people being like, oh no, this is really bad for the self employed. Whereas I was like, but I'm in total control of everything. I think it'd be really bad to be employed at this point because then someone else is deciding if I get to work or not. I was self employed. I could do whatever I liked. Felt like the world's your oyster. Make as many changes as you like, which again is a really big benefit of having a fairly small business.
Can I also just say, like, so much of that is your mindset
Yeah.
because so many self-employed people, like, and I knew so many PTs that were like, oh, this is awful, and look, I've not even really been like paying my taxes, so now I'm not going to get furlough money, and oh, woe is me, and like, oh, well, I could never do online, and like, kind of like stuck their nose up to it, and it's like, yeah, it was shit for you, but it wasn't shit for Jules because she was like, wow, I've got all this freedom, I can do all this stuff, I'm going to make these changes, I'm going to capitalize on this change on and like make an opportunity out of it. But that is a mindset thing because the vast majority of people flip the other way and they're like, well, I can't go outside, can't use the gym, can't blah blah blah. Like they had a completely different mindset to that. So I think, I mean, you're not giving yourself enough credit there for just being like, wow, I see the benefits here, because a lot of people were like, I wish I was employed and just got furlough. Do you remember that word as well? When do we ever use it anymore?
Like, I think you can train yourself into this though.
Oh,
I don't,
100%. Yeah, yeah,
don't
yeah.
think I'm
You just
always
do
that
it better.
person. Yeah. I think you can train yourself into that, and like, see that. I think this is probably a good point when you were talking about how you feel different being back in London, and I get like you recognise there are people who be like, yeah, but I live in my hometown and I'm surrounded by all my friends from school. So am I. I've not geographically moved. I'm still surrounded by the same people, but I am also now surrounded by people who have that growth, business building. Yes, we can. Everything is figure outable mindset. I've just added more people to my circle who get it. So I do still have the same friends who have a very different life, who have corporate lives, young kids, all of that. But I now also have a huge circle of people who get it. And AFM's a massive part of that. So if you're thinking, oh, but I can't move or surround myself with different people, well, you can join us at AFM because
Hmm.
we're available and we can help support you. And I think that's it is look outside the box. You don't have to change what you've got. You can add to what you've got now and surround yourself with people who get it. And that's when everyone was doing their year end post. Mine wasn't so much about like what I'd done this year. It's about the people I'm surrounded by because they make a massive difference in my life. And it's when you surround yourself with people that have got that growth mindset, it's infectious.
Oh, 100%. And can I just say as well, I built all of my businesses from Dundee.
Hmm.
And actually, like, I wouldn't say I've had particular business growth this year that I've lived in London. So it's not like you can't do that. It's just that it was just a noticeable thing, I think, going home for the Christmas period. And then the other thing about that, because we were talking in our mentoring group, like the mentors, with talking about the boot camp that we're going to do at the end of January. More information on this shortly. But I'd shared the landing page with the guys so they could critique it and give me feedback on it and see what needs to be added. And one thing Chrissy said was like, you need to push the networking more, the community more. Like, it's so valuable. Like, how do we showcase that that's what people get access to, as well as like all the other coaches here, and like how successful they are and how much we share and how much we support each other. And you're so right. And it's so hard to conceptualize into words. Like, I just think it always sounds a bit shit. Oh, you're going to get community, and oh, you might get to network and stuff. And I'm like, that is so by far the most valuable thing. Like, it's so, so, so unbelievably useful. And even when you're like, oh, I'm someone who's not really into like groups and I normally just sit in the back, like the amount of people that have said that and then come in and been like, oh shit, now I see what you're talking about. But if there's anything that's going to like break your own glass ceilings, build your business, force you to take some action, make you feel supported, stop you questioning yourself so much, like, this is it, with people who actually get it. And if you are someone who's struggling with some of the noise that comes from, and again, like Jules was saying, like, you're probably taking advice just from the wrong people. They're probably, it's not like you have to cut off your school friends or something. It's just they have a different life and they have different ambitions, and they maybe haven't run a business before, or they don't have that drive and that focus, and that's absolutely fine. Like, if you start running, not all your fucking friends have to be into running as well. It's the same. It's like, you start a business, don't expect everybody to understand that, but also just be aware of like who you're going to for specific things. Like, there are people that I'm like, I'd go to you for relationship advice, and there's people that like, I'd go to you for business advice, and then I probably wouldn't swap those people, right? So just be aware of that in your own life. Like, who do you go for certain things and certain support?
I think another huge part of the network is it's the amount of knowledge. So all of the FM coaches do massively different things. And we always see in our WhatsApp group, like going on each other's podcasts because they've got different areas of expertise. They learn from each other. Someone will be like, what do I do with X? And they've got this query. And someone's like, oh, that's exactly what I do. And they help them answer it. The
Yeah,
actual sharing
literally
of
right now.
knowledge.
Yeah, literally right now, Leanne's just posted something about a client with back pain. Someone else has been like, I'm a back pain specialist. This is what you should do. Boom. Like, so it's not just the building of business side, but it's also like, here's a resource of really passionate, incredible coaches that all want to better each other, that no one's gatekeeping information. She could be like, oh, well, I'm not going to tell her. She's going to give that to her client. And like, that doesn't benefit me at all. But when everyone is in a giving like, you know, like we're go-giver vibes, right? Where it's like, if you can help someone, help them. When everybody does that, everybody gets so much from it. And that's why we're actually quite selective with who we allow in as well. Like, you know, one of the questions on the application is like, are you willing to give as much as you get here? Because I don't want people that are just like, get, like it's all about me. For sure, like you're paying to join a mentorship, you're going to get a lot, right? There is an element of that, but also we want people that want to give back as well. And that might not look the same for everyone. We're not saying you always have to be active in the WhatsApp group or whatever, but like there has to be an element of like when I see someone else that needs help with something I've just dealt with or something I've overcome or some way that I've figured out how to do something, like I'm going to share that.
What I love, this happens on Mastermind all the time, that it's not even just something you knew you needed help with. You'll be on Mastermind, someone will ask a question, and people will be like, huh, I didn't even know I needed to know that. And you'll learn something that you didn't even know you should ask the question. So the amount of knowledge that's shared about building businesses, about creating a business building mindset, about being a better coach, it's unbelievable. And the level of no gatekeeping. Literally nobody keeps anything to themselves ever. When anyone finds anything good, their first instinct is to share it with everyone else.
Yeah. And also like no, we don't have egos about it either. If you're like, oh, I did this other mentorship and I learned this and I think it's really useful, we're like, great. I'm not like, oh my God, don't say that. That's somebody else's thing or like, oh, whatever. It's like, okay, cool. If we can learn something from somebody else, like, I think that's part of the benefit of having female mentors as well is that there is a lot less ego. Like, you know, if someone else has a better input on something than I do, and like I've never run a in-person gym, you know, like I'm often like, oh, let's get someone else in who's better able to answer this. Yeah. Right. What's your last one?
My last one is sometimes you win, sometimes you learn,
Hmm.
because it's
A
never a
class.
failure.
Hmm.
So no matter what happens, you'll either win or you'll learn how to win.
Yeah. And sometimes, like, you know what? Sometimes that can be painful.
Hmm?
Like, the not winning can be painful. That lesson can be fucking painful. And kind of back to what I was saying about like the love of fate, like, you'll learn the most from the most painful lessons. That's the only real silver lining I have for them is that, like, they're going to hurt like fuck. They might cost you a lot of money. They might cost you heartbreak, whatever it is. But, like, you'll learn the most from those.
I was
And
going to
that,
say sometimes they're expensive.
yeah, like, yeah, for sure. But often, like, the more expensive the failure, whether it's time, effort, money, emotion, like, that actually, that's what really does allow you to then make the changes.
And it's that when something goes wrong, don't sit in it. Like, right, it went wrong. Keep going. Keep moving. What are you going to learn? What are you going to change? How do we make it better? Figure it out.
I saw some tweet the other day and it was like, now I can't remember who it was about. It might have been Michael Jordan or something, but it was like Michael Jordan has like the best amount of goals. What are they called? Hoops? God, I've really wrecked this quote. But anyway, it was like the best goal scoring. Do you call it a goal in
Points.
point
Points.
scoring? Right, okay, best point
Yeah.
scoring. But then it was like he also has the most missed shots. And it's like, yeah, he took more shots, you know? And for sure, he's also very skilled at it. But like one of the reasons he's so skilled is that he also failed more than everybody else as well.
But that's what we
Um,
suggested on Mastermind. You've got to just keep
mhm.
doing it, keep trying stuff, keep putting stuff out. And yeah, you'll end up with more failures than everyone. But you also end up with more successes because you've tried more than everyone else.
Agree. Right. My last one. You need three things to make 2025 successful. One, big goals that excite you enough to actually do the work. Two, the discipline so that you show up on the days you don't want to. And then three, focus so that you know that you're putting your efforts in the right place. If you have those three things, you're a winner. And then I'll add to that what Jules just said. Like, just keep going, just keep trying, just keep iterating and learning. And like, you have to see this as a bit of a game. Kanchan just asked in the group, like, she's like, hey, SG, like when you're doing more than one launch or, you know, you're launching numerous businesses, how do you not just become so overwhelmed you want to cry? And I'm like, have fun. Like, you asked for this. Like, basically, she's been taking action and has got really busy. And now she's like, oh my God, this feels quite overwhelming. And I'm like, this is what you asked for, right? Like, and also there's an element of like, when you keep telling yourself that you're overwhelmed, guess what? You feel overwhelmed, right? And I kind of had this like bit of an epiphany with heartbreak situation where I was like, I keep telling myself that I'm sad, and then I am sad, right? And there was like a day I was like, why do I keep telling myself that I'm sad? Like you're kind of like just like, yeah, like then you become sad, right? And if you keep telling yourself I'm overwhelmed, I've got so much to do, I'm so stressed, guess what? You are overwhelmed and stressed. When you're like, this is fucking cool, loads of people want to work with me, let's go, this is the impact I'm going to have, let's get excited about it instead, it feels very, very different. Now, I won't lie, like there are times I catch myself feeling overwhelmed, and then I'm like, this is fun. Like, have some fun with it, take the pressure off, and then it becomes much easier to deal with.
Completely agree. It's all the frame. My friend owns a coffee shop, and she doesn't like the staff to be like, "Oh my God, it's so busy in here." She tries to get them to be like, "It's so buzzing in here."
Yeah,
It's the same. The amount of people's the same. The amount of work's the same. But it's how
yeah.
you view it. Are you buzzing off it, or are you letting it overwhelm you? Just buzz off it
And
instead.
also, yeah, like it's if you view it like that, it's a lose-lose situation. Because like, I really want to be busy, and then if you're not busy, like, and then you get busy and you get overwhelmed, and then if you're not busy, you're like, oh my God, I'm so stressed, I'm not busy, I'm not making any money, or like, oh, this isn't working. It's like, you wanted this, you wanted to be busy, this is the whole point, this is why you run your business, this is fucking great, let's go. That's what you need to get excited about.
But I also think then what I would do in a situation is that, right, so if you're like, oh, I'm so overwhelmed, I can't do this, right, just close your business then. And people are like, no, I don't want to do that, right, we'll get on with it. And
Yeah.
it's bottom line in it. What is it you want? And people are like, no, actually, I actually know, now that you say it like that, I do appreciate it.
Or even just like, okay, if you're overwhelmed, just tell those two clients that just signed up that you're going to have to refund them because you don't have time to do it. And then they're like, oh,
No.
okay, actually, I can do it. And I am excited about doing it. I do that to myself quite a lot. Like, I'm like, I'll look at a day and I'm like, oh my God, there's quite a lot to do there. And it's like, okay, well, is there anything that you really don't want to do? Like, don't want to do enough not to do it? Then take it out. Like, you're the boss. Of course, it will have impact, right? Like, if you're like, no, I just don't really want to do any of my calls today, I'll just cancel them. But obviously, I also have to own the response of that, which is that I'd need to move them to the next day, or I'd need to refund people if I decided I just didn't want to work with them anymore. Like, there are always consequences to these things, but like at the end of the day, it's your choice, it's your business. And I think sometimes like just playing that out and reminding yourself, and then you're like, oh no, I do want to do this, or like, actually, I'm quite excited about recording that podcast. I just told myself it was like another thing I had to do, but I actually want to do that. Like, it's going to be really useful, and I love talking about those things. And yeah, so the way you frame it, mega important. And finally, if you want to work with us this year, we have, I think I've got one or two one-to-one spaces left. I think Jules has like 3 or 4 one-to-one spaces left. I will put the application form in the show notes, fill that out, like we said. We're a little bit picky with who we work with. And that's partly because we want to make sure that we're the right people to help you. And it's partly because we want to make sure that you're the right fit for AFM. And we look forward to hearing from you. And then there is going to be a bit of a boot camp at the end of January. More information on that will be coming very shortly. And again, I think what I'm going to do is an application form for that as well, just so we make sure we're getting in the right people. Awesome. Have amazing 2025s. Thank you for your time and for your brain, Jules.
Bye.
Bye.